abiowe musarum primordia et Jupiter latine loquitur, ergo autem nobis latine incipiendum est. Duos amicos illustrissimus nunc invito, professorem Markum Janka et doctorem Michaelem Stierstorfem, qui ex urbe Monaco per interrete ad nos operaverunt, et in sede Bavariae Marcus vitam et operam auctorum Grecorum et Latinorum investigat, atque studentes et magistros in amore antiquitatis educat. Michael autem pueros in Gymnasio Schäftlarn latine docet, et situm interretialem nomine Magister Caesar apud YouTube habet. Multos libros iam scripserunt, atque ediderunt, et hodie nobis de sortibus panis tributis narrabunt. Pavimentum est vestrum, ut dico.
Plurimas gratias ago, et nunc praesentationem vobis demonstrare conabor, videtisne omnis, optime. Gratias plurimas, carissima Casia, salutationi latinae, valde gaudio me utiam dixi Anglice, cum sodalibus, cum vobis sodalibus, collegii nostri, praeterita praesentibus dedicati, ad praeterita praesentibus transmittenda dedicati, hodie absentibus colloqui tandem posse, multo maius gaudium erit, mox praesentem cum praesentibus vobis collocuturum esse. And now I change into the English language, as you see in the title, Dystopian Latin Teaching. Today we did not mention, but we all know that we live in a kind of dystopian times, pandemia and war. 2019, when we met again, that this is the last time in presence in Warsaw, no one did think about all these dystopian traits in our own time and our own lives, and the world has changed. But dystopia also in children's and young adults literature is present pretty long time. And Michael Stierstorfer and I investigated some aspects of this overarching topic of this item, and we try even to investigate didactic perspectives of best-selling and also blockbuster dystopia, exemplified here in The Hunger Games by Susan Collins, by pointing, as Kaja just pointed out, to the Greek and Roman roots and the Greek and Roman outset that all this has, and all this is quite implicit and not so explicit in many times. And now we start our presentation, and I ask my colleague Michael Stierstorfer to start with the first slide.
Yeah, welcome also from my side. And thank you very much for the nice introduction, Kaja. It was very funny. And yes, we now deal with the didactic perspectives of you. Of course, you all know the tributes of Parliament. In my hand, there is the latest prequel after a trilogy was published. Now there is a prequel which was also and is still very successful, the Song of Bird and Snake, and soon there will be a fifth movie even, and this shows that the success of the series is still actual, and this is, in our point of view, a big motivation for pupils or even students to deal with this at school. And we want to show you in which different ways the Greek and Roman mythology is used in this series. And also there's a lot of very great secondary literature like this one. It's the philosophy and the tributes of Panem. And so there are a lot of different ways to deal with this trilogy. Most important is the multimodal elements of Greco-Roman mythology and history in this series, and we will show you some characteronyms, group narratives, and moti, which are used in the series. And also this is a tribute to our mythical beasts, a creation of hybrid heroic figures, archaic objects and places. And the trilogy, it's a positive sanctioning by a lot of critics, but some also say that it's full of gore, and so it's a little ambiguous. And at last but not least, the multimedia association. So we can work in very different ways with pupils, which is very good for their motivation. And now you see the Bavarian curriculum. It's there you can use the tributes of Panem in the 10th class around the topic Rome and Europe, to demonstrate how the influence of the Greek-Roman antiquity is on European culture and also on post antique texts. And then also interesting and important is that the series is in our point of view a crossover text. That means that also children and young people and also adults can read it, as for the series especially young people and adults. And the interesting thing is that fantasy and the series is some kind of fantasy, maybe a mixture between fantasy and science fiction. It's closely, and the genre of fantasy has always been closely linked to the all-age phenomenon. And when you can talk about texts between generations, it's also very motivating also for young people to read this, when they can talk about it also sometimes with older people like their parents or even grandparents. And there are very different myths and motives used in the series. So in the first volume, the myth of Jesus is in the focus. And during the volumes 1 to 3, there are the Roman gladiator games, I think, which is best seen. The other motives are a bit implicit. And also social unrest in early Rome is dealt with, and the siren myth plays also an important role. And to situate these different kind of elements, we use this scheme, which is part of my PhD. And there are, Markus, kannst du vielleicht nochmal die englische Version hertun, bitte? Genau, die. On the row on the top, there are the quantity of the elements, like complex of myth, single myth, motive, and single elements. And on the left side, you see the quality of adaptation which can be retelling, like Gustav Schwab, which can be varying, whereas a little change correcting. There's a big change to correct the myth, and the author says that the standard version is a wrong one. Revisioning is like Percy Jackson, when the myth is used for modern times. And we have also a continuing narrative when the myth is told further, when it is said the standard version is a precedence, and now it's continued. And then with this scheme, we want to situate the tributes. So, like, that's the next. Genau, and when we want to locate it, in our opinion, it's a mixture between mythical motives, because, for example, the myth of Caesars is used as a motive, and there are also some elements like we will deal with that in our lecture, like Katniss as Diana, and as a Caesar's figure, the labyrinth as a setting, and also the trident as an item, and these are single elements which are put in the series together with motives. And so in our opinion, it's a mixture between Inversio 3 and Inversio 4. The three ways in which the Latin culture and Roman culture is included are characteronym speaking names for characters, paratext, you know, panem et circenses, and fictitious languages or terms created by the author based on Latin, like AVOX. We will talk about it, what is an AVOX, and these are three ways which also can be found in the Harry Potter series, and we will show it now in the Hunger Games. Demonicus says that the labyrinth and the Caesar's myth is a very important part of the Hunger Games. She says Collins was inspired, among other things, by Greek mythology, in particular by the legend of the Minotaur, which had already taken a fancy to her as a child. The cruelty of the king of Crete left a deep mark on Collins and was the inspiration for the design of Panem, the setting of the Hunger Games. And this also Collins herself said that she read the myth in her childhood, and she was shocked about the cruelty, and that's the reason why she wanted to write a modern version of it, because in her eyes there's nothing more cruel and terrible when children are sacrificed by a tyrannic system. And the most important thing in our eyes is the myth of Theseus. It's in two levels, in the labyrinth battle, and also the motive of sacrificing by a tyrannical system. And the most important source is in this way Ovid's Metamorphosis, and about that Markus will tell you something.
Thank you. The eminent role of Ovid's Metamorphosis in contemporary popular culture, not directly shown by Collins, but directly shown by this example in children's literature. Theseus, Ariadne, and the Minotaur in Ovid's Metamorphosis, in Valentina Orlando's Ovid for Fun, in the Italian original Ovidio per Gioco. The labyrinth of the Minotaur here depicted with the thread of Ariadne and Theseus, and in a children-like manner. And the interesting thing for me is that Ovid is here the source who wrote much more about Daedalus than about the Minotaur himself, but he wrote about the Minotaur, and this is the text I wanted to show you from the 8th book of the Metamorphosis, which contains also the story of Daedalus and Icarus, which is read much more often in schools than that part. And this is an observation which we make very often, that texts popular in children's literature and in contemporary culture are read less often in schools. And so there is a kind of difficulty we tend to solve by our project. And this is the famous text, and it's also labyrinthine, as Michael said about Collins's construct. Also, this sentence is labyrinthine by Ovid, and I tried to translate it into English. After the double shape of bull and young man was locked there, and the monster, nourished 2 times by Attic blood, was defeated by the 3rd tributes after 9 years each, and when, with the help of a maiden, the intricate entrance passed by no one twice before was found again by unrolling the thread. At once Aegeus' son, who is of course Theseus, abducted Minos' daughter, Ariadne, and sailed away to dire Naxos, where his companion was cruelly left behind by him at the shore. And that you hear the very beautiful Latin of Ovid, also if the content is most cruel. Quo postquam geminam tauri juvenisque figuram clausit et actaio bis pastum sanguine monstrum tertia sors annis domuit repetita novenis ut quope virginea nullis iterata priorum janua difficilis philost inventa relecto protinus aegides raptaminoide diam vela dedit comitemque suam crudelis in illo litere destituit. And the new Ovid brings into the already very well-known myth is here, as I pointed out elsewhere, that Theseus is marginalized, as Aegides, not even the name is told, and only Ope Virginia, only with the help of the maiden Ariadne. Theseus is only part of the tertia source of the tributes which are to be sacrificed to the monstrum, which seems to be much more interesting to the voice of the author, who tells us this cruel story. And Michael now will compare the Ovidian version with the Hunger Games.
Yes, as you can see, we have a lot of parallels, like as Athens comes to Crete, and the district states come to the capital, and the punishment, of course, is very, very similar. Even the draw and Katniss, she is a volunteer, and as Caesar's was, she wants to save her sister, and in the end, there are also dangerous opponents in the myth of Caesar's. Of course, you know, the Minotaur, and here in the Hunger Games, there are hybrid wolves with the eyes of the killed children. Both are at least the victorious, and they succeed with the help of their love interests. So we can say that the narrative is implicit. And yeah, the next one, please. So it's even more intense, because the adaptation shows more danger, because the frequency of the sacrificial games is higher. Katniss not only once is in the games, but several times. And also yeah, and we have different animals and monsters, not only the Minotaur, but also monkeys and other mutated monsters. And there are also some differences. For example, that the arena in the volume 2 is like a clock with enigmas and not really a labyrinth. And in volume 3, the labyrinth is implicitly shown with a course of trap around the Capitol. And so we say that the meta-narrative of the trilogy is the myth of Caesars. And here you can see also in the movie and also in the book that the real labyrinth is under the arena, because there are a lot of ways, and in this part the also Katniss and the other gladiators, they are set ready for the fight here by the stylist Zinner. And here are the different hybrids in the movies. You see the wolf, then very big wasps and aggressive monkeys, which are implicit the Minotaur. And yeah, this all those reasons, and this way we had the idea to translate the text into Latin. And how this experience was tells you, Markus.
Thank you. This ancient color, not only, but very strongly conveyed by the Theseus myth and all the allusions to Roman history, we will point out later, brought us to the thought to go the other way around as with Ovid before, whom I translated into German first and then into English also, into modern languages, to take the ancient color of a modern text of the trilogy by Susan Collins and to translate it into Latin. There is a very intense and in the last years intensified tradition of translating modern texts into ancient Latin and also into ancient Greek. Michael selected passages from all the 3 volumes of the trilogy that conveyed a coherent picture of the whole plot. And this was a very great achievement, so that we could manage within this content to convey the whole trilogy. And we translated it into, as we think, adequate Latin, but you can prove this now by some examples, and you can see as the volume is built up. In the beginning, you have a short introduction in German. I translate this into English. The lottery procedure at the Hunger Games. Katniss explains the lottery procedure for the upcoming Hunger Games and how one is chosen for tribute. Then the so-called harvest, that is the drawing of lots for the tributes, takes place. On this occasion, all the inhabitants of District 12 gather in the marketplace and wait for the merry Hunger Games to begin. And then you have the reference to the German translation of the Hunger Games. And also I can give you the reference to the English translation, page 13 to 20. The reaping system is unfair. It starts there until it's Primrose Aberdeen. Also, we do here at our chair translational studies, and we compared, and it was very interesting how close the German translation is to the English original. There is a very strong force of being very close, and this force was given to us by the publisher, who said you have to be very close, also in Latin, because this is prescribed by law in such cases. And so we tried our best. And I give you an example of this: ratio messis in justas, pauperes pessimas partes habent, cum primum quis duodecim annos natus est, ad messem eligi pot est. Unus quisque duodecim annos natus, unam sortem accipit. Quibis tredecim annos natus, duas sortes accipit. hoc continuatur usque duodeviginti annus, qua aetate ultima electio unus cuiusque fieri potest, et nomen eius septies per globum vitreum volat. Haec unicuique civi duodecim regionum hanes lex constitutast. Sed prava res est haec, siquis est pauper, et esurit, sicut nos, nomen sum saepius adere potest, commutans hoc adito tesseras lapideas. Quaque tessera lapidea victum modicum frumenti et olei ad unum hominem allendum solvere potest. Etiam familiaribus tesseras comparare potest. Quam obrem cum duodecim annus nata essem ego, nomen meum quater per globum vitreum cucurrit, semel quia debui et ter quia tesseras commutavi frumento et oleo, quibus et ego et primula et mater vesceremur. Et sic quod annis factumst, quae notae eae cumulantur, nomen meum hoc anno quo sedecim annos natas sum, iam viginti notas habet. Gallus, qui duodeviginti annos natus est, per septem annos quinque familiaris suus solus aluit, et alimenta contribuit. Ideo nomen eius etiam quadraginta et duas notas habet. And the beginning, another short example from the beginning of the third chapter, Katniss as voluntary tribute. We have the German introduction here. After Katniss hears the name of her sister, Primula Prim, who has been drawn for the games, she's deeply shocked. Without much hesitation, she volunteers, much to the delight of sensationalist present here, Effie Trinket. Moreover, Katniss remembers that Peter Mellark, who has been chosen as another tribute, used to throw her charred loaves of bread on the outside, which he was supposed to feed to the pigs, when he was a baker's son in his younger days, which helped Katniss and her starving family a lot. Primula, clamorem debilitatem edo, musculi mei convalescunt, primula, non via mihi facere debeo per multitudinem, nam ceteri liberi sua sponte locum mihidant liberum aditum ad scaenam facientes. Eo ipso tempore quos calas ascendo cum ea sum. Motu brachii eam post me removio. Voluntaria prodeo. Angelo, sors tributa voluntaria prodeo. In scaena confusio fit, e regione duodecima per decenia ne unus quidem voluntarius prodiit, et non iam omnes praecepta in tabulis fixa de voluntariis memoria tenent. Lex est ut alius pur aut alia puella prodire et locum eius sive pueri sive puellae obtinere possit, cuius nomen e globo vitreo extractumst. In non nullis regionibus quibus magno honori est messem vincere, homines libentissime in vitae periculum se inferunt. Quade causa difficile est voluntate prodire, ad in regione duodecima, qua sors tributa nihil aliot significat nisi cadaver, nulli fere voluntarii prodire solent. Praetor me vulto contristato aspicit, vix me cognovit, sed memoria tenuis ad esse videtur. Sum ea puella quae fragus apportat, ea puella de qua filia eius fortasse, aliquando narrabit, ea puella quae ante quinque annos matri et sorori artissime conjuncta adstitit, cum ei, quia maxima natu fuit, nomisma virtutis traderetur, nomisma patri tributum, qui in cuniculis montanis evanuit. Riminisciturne hoc? Permittite ut ea ascendat. Post me primula insanum clamorem tollit, macra brachia sua ut retinaculum mece confundunt. Menime catanissa minimi ne prodieris. Mitte me, acrita dico quia alita animo perturbarer, et flere nolo. Televisione hodie vesperi emissione messium repetente, omnes lacrimas meas cernet et meque facilem victimam ignavamque estimabunt, sic eis non satisfacere in animo habeo. Mitte me. Videtisne nunc ipse latine colloquor postcom latine recitavi. You see how the dramatic art of Collins' simple but intense language, which fascinated me translating this into Latin, how adequate it was. But you need a lot of items, you need a lot of vocabulary, which is not extant in classical antiquity, of course. And so you need Neo-Latin lexica and things like that. And we made vocabularium, glossarium with all these terms, which we think can be very useful to have modern language and modern Latin, the latest Neo-Latin at hand, also televisione, at things like that, for creative lessons in school. And now Michael goes on.
You know, now as a time is a little bit running, so I think we move on more fast. If somebody wants to read the whole presentation, we can send it to you. So then we shorten a little bit. So the influence of the gladiator games and the Hunger Games are also in several ways. The gladiators, they fight against each other and also against wild animals, but not like the Romans did in pairs. So, but in all together, and this is the big difference. Yeah, we can move on. You can see here Finnick, which is one of the tributes, and in his hands he holds a fuskina. He is similar to Poseidon. It's also said he is from the district of the fishermen, and in the book, when this tribute is presented, he is dressed with a net. And also interesting that the arena is around like in Roman times, but here we have a digitized arena with engineers, and they create the traps and monsters, and they set it in 3D models into the arena, and then it appears in reality. We have also the myth of Menenius Agrippa, which tells a fable in the Secessio, the optimates against the plebs, and there are also difference, and especially in the first part of the third movie, Mockingjay 1, as you see on the next folie. There the president Snow, he says to the districts, because he doesn't want them to stand up and to have their own opinion, and so he says peace is necessary, and he says to them it's a peace based on togetherness. It's a contract each district provides for the capital, just as blood flows to the heart. In return, the capital provides order and security. To refuse to work is to deliberately endanger the whole system. The capital is the beating heart of Panem for everyone, and nothing survives without a heart. And here it's said that the districts are the blood, and it goes to the heart, and so the heart is also necessary to pump the blood, and so they need each other. And this is a perfect way to say them that they have to stay as underdogs.
So, and we in Colloquium Latinum at the university with students, I compared it with the Latin text, and as time is running, as Michael said, we make here no close reading, but I showed you the central words and concepts, which are in Livy's version as well as in the Hunger Games. Pavor, fear, mutual fear, and the different, the social elite, patres, and plebes, the underdogs. And you have the appeal of the president to unanimous acting of all people, and the fear of war also. And so you have this Menenius Agrippa as a kind of foil to Coriolanus Slow with his famous narrative.
And you can also see the two-class society in the film with the dresses. Of course, the capital, they are dressed very healthy and wealthy and decadent, and the other poor and was yeah, not very colorful. Also, the sirens and the myth of the sirens plays a role in the part 2 of this series. They imagine some birds and they imitate the voices of the relatives of Katniss, even of her sister and the mother, and it's very terrific for her because she thinks that also her relatives are now in the games, and she is nearly to become mad. But then she points out that this cannot be real, and ignores this terrific voices, and in this way she saves herself and defeats this new version of the sirens. Very important are the characteronyms, which are from the Roman high society, and also names of rulers, as you can see on the next picture, like Caesar, Seneca, and it's also it's all names from the upper class, and this is the contrast to the names of the good figures like Primrose, also it's nature-like names, Buttercup, Laurel, and we have not Roman or Greek names, but names from nature, which is a very important setting, of course, in dystopian literature, because nature is mostly destroyed, and so it has to be saved. Another characteronym is here a very prominent figure. In the movie, it's a little figure, but in this novel, it becomes a main character, and it's Tigris. Of course, you know, or you see why she is named like that. She is a stylist from the capital, an ex-stylist, and she looks like a tiger. And so the names, they characterize the figures more intense. And we have also group names. It's very cool. The AWOCs, this are like serfs, and the tongue is cut out of the mouth because they were against the capital, and this and they have to serve now without having a voice in the capital. Most important is the paratext, which is also in the title. The Hunger Games is a German title, Tribute von Panem, and of course, you know, it's from the satirical author Juvenal, and he said Panem at Kansas, and here it is explained in this famous part of the text. Panem at Kansas can be translated as bread and games. I think of the capital, the abundance, and the ultimate entertainment, the Hunger Games. So that's what the districts are for, to provide bread and games. And he said this is the reason why the people of the capital, they don't look to politics, and they don't deal with politics, because they are satisfied with games and bread.
And this is, again, a very clever way of Collins to combine the somatic view of the state as represented in the fable and the narrative of Menenius Agrippa with this satirical view of Juvenal. For he who, as a people, once bestowed rule, officers, legions, everything, today restricts himself and is concerned about two things only when it comes to wishing: bread and circus pleasures. Nam populus qui dabat olim imperium fasces legionis omnia nunc continent atque duas tantum res anxius optat pan et circenses. As Panes as a nourishment for the people. It's quasi extrapolated from the metaphor of Menenius Agrippa. It's only the object to keep the underclasses calm in the imperial age, and has not yet this force, which is shown in Imperium Fasces Legionis, the real force which was in the Roman Republic in the hands of the populus Romanus.
And there it is also shown that bread in Panem is a luxury thing to eat. It's horrific that nowadays, in times of Russian war, also bread in other countries like Africa, who got a lot of bread from the Ukraine, is also in India a luxury product, and this is very horrific parallel to the Hunger Games, and that's the reason why they are very, very actual even after more than 10 years of their appearance. Katniss is a hybrid figure and also inspired by mythology. She is a mixture between Theseus, Diana, and Spartacus. Also, she's a phoenix. She has the symbol of the bird in fire, and her name is the girl in fire with the fire dress. And she also goes up like she rises like a phoenix out of the ashes, and she can with her bow she can also shoot very, very intense, and that's she is a hunter like the goddess of Diana. And even an Amazon like Wonder Woman, who fights against bad men like Snow. And the cornucopia is also here. It's a symbol for death and not for abundance. Inside, when you can see on the next picture, there are weapons to fight against each other and to bring each other death. Even the capital, when you see the geographic card, it's the same. It's similar to the Rome and the hills around the capital in Rome. And also the sign of the Capitol, as you can see on the next picture, it's very, very similar to the insignia of the Romans, with the eagle, with the bolt, and the subscription is a bit different, not SPQR, but C for capital. And there's also an atlas, very interesting, and in this atlas you can see the setting of Panem, how it can be imagined in a picture. So when you deal with that with pupils, you can work in a multimedia way. As you can see on the next one, you have also the films. The song Hanging Tree can also be very good analyzed, fandoms and lexica, and a lot of more material, and it can be used for very varying teaching. So let's come to the conclusions. You can say that the Hunger Games are a polyvalent text with several cultural codes. It's very interesting when you know Latin and the ancient myths to have a bigger understanding of the series, in our opinions. And there you can show the pupils that it's good to know Latin and Roman culture, because then you are better in reading and understanding fantasy literature, like also Harry Potter and Percy Jackson and other ones. And this is our thesis. And it's very motivating for children. It's all age text, which are for different ages, adaptable. And and nowadays our most important things in political political learning is that it's a warning against totalitarian systems, because the system of snow and the draconic Hunger Games, this is defeated, and a democratic way is established, and nowadays the democrats, they are more in danger in several countries, and this is very sad. And I think with this literature we can socialize pupils in a democratic way. And also when we see in Russia that there's no democracy anymore, and so I think it's very important for children to read this and to deal with this in the lessons. And we thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, in all this dystopia, we have a beam, as so to say, of hope. And we wish all of you sit fortuna semper vobiscum, and in German also möge das Glück stets mit euch sein. Thank you very much.